The opening scene features 5 friends who are getting ready for their trip to Croatia. They are planning to hike and climb high mountains and make it a memorable adventure. The group members consist of a trained hiker couple, Fred and Corinne, a nurse, Chloe, her boyfriend Loic, and Guillaume. Before they start their trip, Fred asks Loic if he is comfortable with Guillaume joining them. It turns out that Guillaume is Chloe's ex-boyfriend, who still harbors feelings for her. Loic says it's fine, even though Guillaume's liable to try to push him off the cliff at some point, and the group sets off for the trip. After enjoying a few hours of drive, they arrive at the starting point of their hike, only to discover that it is closed off with steep mountain rocks. Moreover, there's a warning board that deems the place unsafe for hiking. Despite this, the experienced climber Fred climbs up the steep rock and convinces the others to cross the track. He also sets up a rope harness and hooks for the rest of them to follow suit. The inexperienced Loic is clearly scared, but he is encouraged by Chloe to proceed. While waiting for him to arrive, Guillaume strikes up a conversation with Chloe. He expresses his happiness to see her after a long time, and also asks her about her well-being. Here, we learn that Chloe has been grappling with guilt and trauma, as she had accidentally killed a young patient during treatment. She responds that she's recovering well, and is optimistic that this hike will get her further refreshed. As their journey progresses, they realize that the trail is not as easy as they had anticipated. After a while of climbing, the group comes across an old and unstable suspension bridge, which they will have to cross in order to reach the other side. Fred leads the way, and he is followed by Guillaume and then Chloe. But when it comes to Loic, he gets paralyzed by fear, causing him to stop in the middle. Seeing this, Corinne tries to help him, but her boyfriend stops her, as the bridge is not strong enough to hold 2 people at a time. Chloe then encourages Loic to come to her, and he somehow manages to get to the other end. But, unbeknownst to them, the bridge is already on the verge of breaking down. At last, Corinne makes her way through the bridge. As she gets to the midway, the old bridge gets twisted and suddenly collapses, leaving her hanging by the harness. Sensing the urgency of the situation, Fred hastily throws another rope towards her and begins pulling her to safety. She is rescued just moments before the ropes snap. With the bridge gone, the group realizes that they can't turn back, although it's the only way they know. Loic freaks out and directs his frustration towards Fred, blaming him for leading them onto such a closed-off trail. However, Fred asserts that they have no time to argue, and that they must make it to the other end of the mountain before the night falls. Following this, the group continues on their journey, climbing through another steep cliff. At one point, they notice that the rope that was meant to hold their harness has been detached. In a quick action, Fred and Corinne climb ahead without harnesses. They promise to pull the rest of the group once they reach the upper surface. In the meantime, Loic, Guillaume, and Chloe try their best to hang on. Guillaume advises the heavily breathing Loic to calm down, but the latter tells him to shut up. He is clearly jealous and hostile because of Guillaume's obvious feelings for Chloe. Soon after, a vertigo-stricken Loic fails to belay the rope, causing him to fall. He also brings the attached Guillaume down with him. Despite the terrifying situation, Chloe doesn't act, as she remains paralyzed by the haunting memories of her past. Meanwhile, Fred and Corinne are wandering through the jungle, looking for a strong tree to tie the rope and help their friends. During this, Fred accidentally steps in a bear trap, severely wounding his leg. Corinne frantically tries to free his leg, but it only causes him excruciating pain. Fred then tells her to get the others first, so that they can help remove the trap. Following this, she runs back to the cliff and drops the rope, enabling the 3 of them to climb up one after another. While she is gone, Fred hears movement in the trees around him as the chain to the trap tightens. Seconds later, he is suddenly dragged away from the scene. Hence, when the group returns, they are unable to find Fred. They only find blood on the surrounding foliage and the empty, blood-stained bear trap. Corinne is initially confused as to how Fred managed to get out of the trap when they couldn't open it before. However, she soon panics, thinking that he must have wandered off and gotten lost. The group, now faced with the grim reality of Fred's absence, debates their next course of action. The cowardly Loic suggests that they prioritize finding an exit. This enrages Corinne, who then gets into an argument with him. However, Chloe steps in and ends the argument, saying that they will be finding Fred first. She also points out that the sun is about to set and all the flare lights are with Fred, so they can't abandon him anyway. As they search the area, the 2 men continue bickering over Chloe. Loic forbids Guillaume from talking to Chloe after this trip, to which the latter smugly responds that she isn't over him yet. Loic loses his cool after hearing this and gets into a brawl with him. Upon witnessing the scuffle, Chloe runs over to break them up, but falls into a pit trap on the way. The others ask if she is okay, but they don't receive any response. Since the pit is deep and dark, they are unable to see her. Corinne then ties a rope to a stone and uses it to rappel down. Once inside, she discovers that it's actually a poacher's trap full of spikes, one of which has pierced through Chloe's arm. Meanwhile, Guillaume feels they're being watched by someone. He tells Loic Loic about it, but the latter dismisses him. Sometime later, they manage to pull Chloe out of the pit and dress her wound. Now, the group realizes that someone has deliberately set up the traps, so they opt to be extra careful. As they continue on their quest, it eventually gets dark and starts raining heavily. Corinne is exhausted and feels hopeless, but Chloe motivates her to keep going. They believe that spreading out will make it easier for them to find Fred quickly, but at the same time, they're too scared to be alone. As a result, they tie each other with the same rope so that they can pull it in case they need help. Following this, they spread out and go deeper into the woods. A short while later, Corinne, who is at the end of the rope, is hit by an arrow through the chest, hurting her gravely. Despite being in pain, she tries pulling the rope, but finds that it's been cut. Fortunately, Chloe happens to turn around and is horrified to see her injured. She frantically rushes to help, but before she can get to her, Corinne is suddenly pulled and dragged away by an unseen entity. Distraught, Chloe opts to go after her, but Loic and Guillaume hold her back, asserting that it's not safe for them to venture any deeper. The remaining 3 group members then sit under a tree for some time to calm themselves down. During this, Loic insists that they abandon Fred and Corinne and search for a way out. This time, the group members agree with him, and the trio sets off on their way after the rain stops. As they continue on, they come across a cabin in the forest and immediately enter in hopes of finding some help. But inside, they are greeted by a grim sight, a naked and bloodied Fred lying on a slab. Chloe tries to save him, but he seems to have been tortured in the worst manner. Despite her efforts, he dies shortly after from shock and blood loss. Chloe breaks down in tears, so Guillaume offers her a consoling hug, while Loic covers the body with a sheet. Loic further suggests that they leave the place right away, citing that the assailant might be back soon. However, Guillaume asserts that they must find Fred's supply bag before leaving. While searching the cabin, Guillaume comes across a secret door leading to the basement. As he heads down, he encounters an unsettling sight. Rows of animal trophies, and more chillingly, human heads suspended from the ceiling. Despite his fear, he continues to search for the supplies when he spots the name Anton written on a wall. Guillaume then speculates that the cabin belongs to the poacher named Anton. Not long after, he finds the supply bag and immediately makes his way out with it. But just then, Loic appears on the top of the staircase and stops Guillaume on the way. He snatches the supply bag and kicks him back to the basement, rendering him unconscious. Envious of Guillaume being closer to his girlfriend, Loic locks him inside the basement and returns to Chloe. In an attempt to convince her to leave, Loic lies that Guillaume was trying to abandon both of them. However, Chloe doesn't believe in him and refuses to leave another friend behind. Amidst their argument, Anton arrives at the cabin with Corinne's dead body. He knocks Chloe out in one go before charging towards Loic. An intense brawl then ensues between two guys, with Loic clearly struggling to defend himself. Shortly after, Chloe wakes up and proceeds to help her boyfriend, but when she manages to get an advantage over Anton and looks to her boyfriend for help, the cowardly Loic flees with a flare, leaving her to die. As a result, Chloe is easily overpowered and knocked down by the poacher. Sometime later, she regains consciousness and finds herself shackled to the wall in the basement alongside Guillaume. The duo desperately tries to free themselves from captivity, while Anton disembowels the corpses of Fred and Corinne upstairs. At one point, Chloe is close to escaping from her shackles, but Anton returns and takes her upstairs to kill her. On the other hand, Loic runs out of flares while running through the woods and has nowhere to go. Back in the basement, Guillaume somehow manages to escape his bonds, but when he tries to go behind Chloe, he finds the basement door locked. Anton slowly approaches Chloe with a knife, but before he can inflict any harm, Loic shows up and attacks the poacher with a rock. Following this, an enraged Anton grabs his crossbow and chases Loic into the woods. This distraction provides Chloe with enough time to free herself, as well as Guillaume. The latter wants to escape, but Chloe insists on saving her boyfriend, her chicken shit boyfriend. In the meantime, Anton shoots an arrow into Loic's leg, causing him to cry out in agony. But despite this, he bravely gets up and starts fighting with the assailant. Amidst the intense scuffle, Loic summons all his strength to remove the arrow from his leg and stab Anton with it. He then hits the poacher several times with a rock before crawling away from him. But unfortunately, he slips from the edge of the cliff, leaving him hanging on a cliffside ladder. Anton watches him from a distance and disappears from sight. Shortly after, Chloe and Guillaume arrive on the scene, and the latter extends a hand to pull him up. Although he initially opts to help him, Guillaume is soon overcome by hatred and anger from what Loic did to him earlier. As a result, he acts as if his hand is slipping and deliberately lets him fall to his death. called it. Chloe cries, mourning her boyfriend's death, while Guillaume tries to comfort her with a hug. Right then, Anton shoots a crossbow arrow through Guillaume's head, killing him on the spot. Now that Chloe is filled with rage and vengeance, she charges towards Anton with a knife, ensuing a fierce fight between the two. Anton easily gains the upper hand and begins to beat her, but at one point, Chloe screams his name, making him stop abruptly. She then uses this opportunity to brutally slice his throat. Chloe gets on top of him to deliver a fatal blow, but she stops when she gets flashes of her dead patient. As a result, she leaves him behind and escapes through the cable, tearfully descending to safety. However, the threat isn't neutralized yet. Anton picks up the knife and rushes towards the cable. As Chloe is traveling down, a loud snap is heard and the screen turns black, implying that Anton managed to cut the cable. The film ends with the note that only Loic's body was found, while Fred, Corinne, Guillaume, and Chloe still remain missing. Moreover, a boy named Anton, who was kidnapped at the age of 5, has never been found. In the same area, countless people go missing every year without any explanation. Videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.